This is Pod Populi.
Podcast for the people.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
Hi again, everyone. It's Brian Howie. Welcome to the Great Love Debate, the world's #1 dating and relationship podcast since 2015. I am here in the very fine studios of Pod Populi, Podcast for the People. I am at the one in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. I don't think I've recorded it in here in several months, and I miss it, so I'm back. I'm bringing her right in. Normally I do some long-winded intro or whatever, but she's got a lot to talk about. She hasn't been on this podcast in maybe 2 years, but she's one of the smartest people I know in talking about what I like to talk about around here. There's one subtle difference, so I'm gonna get into it with her. She is the host of the Monarch of Love. Is it Monarch of Love or For Love?
For Love.
Monarch For Love. Boy, I screwed up her intro. We don't edit around here.
That's okay.
Monarch For
good.
Love podcast. She is the Monarch For Love. The always lovely Michelle Hayes. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me again.
Here is the, maybe I'll be the Monarch of Love. No, you're the Monarch For Love. Here's the subtle difference, and maybe it's not a subtle difference. I love talking about love. You love love. You love the concept, entity, the thing. You love the thing, right?
I love it all. Because sometimes people say, well, shouldn't it be the Monarch of Love? And I'm like, no, because I'm the Monarch for Love.
Right. You're very pro-love.
Yes, I'm very pro-love. I want people to realize that love is not only the most important thing in our lives, but that we have the control to create or destroy the kind of love that we really want.
And I know you talked about this last time you were on the show, but it was a while, so refresher course for our audience here. You didn't always feel this way.
No.
Was there a incident, a moment, a time in your life? What led you to either pivot where you were or go deeper to find like a different viewpoint on this?
Well, I have to say, it wasn't that I always
You were hopeful.
Yeah, I was always hopeful for love, and I was always like excited about it, and I had a lot of enthusiasm for it. But then when it didn't work out for me in my first marriage, I became very disillusioned. I was like, wow, I think I'm a good person. I'm kind of cute. I have a lot of enthusiasm. I just think like I'd never had problems finding a date or whatever. And I just was like, how could I fail at the thing that matters most to me?
Right.
And it was just crushing. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe I married the wrong person. So I started dating a lot, and I married someone else. And then a few short years later, I had the same experience. I was an unhappy wife again. I was like, shoot, I'm the common denominator here.
Right.
What is it? What's happening? What is my problem with how I envision what love should be? And I realized that I had very unrealistic expectations of love. And I think so many people do. They think that love is, going to be these movie stars and books and rom-coms and all these things. And we're built up to believe that love can win and fix everything and everything's wonderful. And that's not the case.
Right. People always say, I want to fall in love, I want to find love or whatever, but they don't take the time like you do to understand the concept and what that really means. I always say that before you find it, you have to define it. And it's hard to define when you haven't asked yourself the questions or you haven't done the work or you haven't done, and it's not just, I need to be with this type of person and then it magically happens for that. There's a lot of, and again, the things that might make love happen at 23 and 33 and 43 are all wildly different. We're all different, but unless you take the time to turn that mirror around, what do I want? What do I need? How does this work for me? And what am I bringing to the table? It's really hard to find.
But the thing is that most people don't realize that love really is a decision. So we meet these people. We love them. I loved my first husband with all my heart. Mm-hmm. He was great. He was smart. He was sexy. He was funny. He had all the things that anybody could want in someone as a partner. But then as life started happening, things started going downhill, and I chased more. I kept asking him more. I need more attention. I want to spend more quality time together.
Right.
And the more I did that, the further he distanced himself, because he realized that he wasn't able to make me happy. And one important thing is, a man needs to know that they could make you happy.
No doubt.
Right?
No doubt.
So if you're always miserable and bitching and
Right.
complaining and all of that stuff, they're going to just stop trying. And I think that's what happens.
And a lot of times it goes on because they're teased by these flickers of happiness, maybe 1 hour a day or 2 days a week. You're happy. So they think, well, I can see it in them. I don't know how to pull it out of them, or I don't know how to enhance that happiness so it is the default emotion that they're experiencing.
Right. But I think what happens really is that we have these expectations. We don't realize how much control we have to cultivate what we really want. And we don't have the skills. Love is a skill that can be practiced and learned. And I want to tell people that, because they think that it's just going to happen.
I agree with you. That, we've had hundreds of thousands of words on this podcast. The one you just said a couple minutes ago, I'd never heard it said that way before. And as soon as you said it, I'm like, oh, I wish I thought of that. Love is a decision.
It is.
That's so good. So a little bit of a subset of that is you have to believe you are worthy of it.
100%.
You have to believe it is possible and that it exists. And a lot of people are like, well, I guess because it didn't feel the way I thought it would feel, I guess it doesn't really exist. So you have to make a choice to be like, I am going to go down this road. I'm going to put my chips on the table. I'm going to put myself in a position where, I might get hurt, but this is where this lives.
You have to be vulnerable.
Yeah, that's scary.
That vulnerability is such a scary and demanding thing. But in order for us to really get deep down into that relationship that we all think we want, the only way to do that is to reveal ourselves, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and not be ashamed of who we are, because we're all wonderful in our own ways. Most of us, I'll just add that. But, we tend to believe that if we complain, we're going to get what we want. And underneath every complaint is really a hidden desire. So I tell my clients this. I say, instead of complaining, take a breath and think about what you really want and say that instead of complaining. Oh, you don't spend quality time with me. You don't do this. You don't do that. Because we're always attacking people.
Right.
The people that we love, we're supposedly love them. And then it just starts being this thing where we can't stand them. How does it go from you're madly in love with someone, it's so hot, you're having great sex, you're doing all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, 5 years later, you can't stand them. I think I heard on one of your podcasts, I forget what you called it, where you walk by the hall and you just say, fuck you.
Hallway sex.
Hallway sex.
Pass each other in the hallway and you say, fuck you. It's hallway sex. Yes.
How do you get from point A to point B?
I know. Two people who were so close and so in love, not just to grow apart, but to grow to the point where you loathe that person. Or that person, what are the, there's so many steps to get there that normally we don't recognize them or we don't speak up until it's too late.
Yes.
And then it's just, it's tough to sort of put that, genie back in the bottle.
Well, we don't want to rock the boat.
Right.
We think that if we have a good relationship, we shouldn't have to tell our partners.
Yeah.
But the truth is, we're not mind readers.
Or it's fine and it's good enough. And so much of the dialogue, even on this show, we're guilty of it too. We play the dating disaster card as much as anybody around here. So much of the dating world and the conversations, especially that women have with each other, is rooted in negativity.
Yes.
Oh, I can't get my husband to do this. Oh, my boyfriend does this. Oh, all the men suck. Nobody does this or whatever. These little confabs of bad dialogue. You don't hear a whole lot of positivity because a lot of people who have the positive, they're shamed and they're not talking about it. Exactly. They don't believe you. Oh, she posted a picture of her and her husband on social media. I bet it's all bullshit. People are shamed into not saying that or they're like, I don't want to make anybody feel bad. So the dialogue skews to the negative.
Well, This is one of the things I always say on my podcast, and I always tell everybody I can possibly tell, and that is all marriages and all relationships have challenges. You can't get away from it. You have to expect the challenges. You have to expect to hate each other every once in a while. But the key to it is saying, you know what? I decided that I'm going to go through it all with this person.
Right.
I'm going to go through the good things because that's very easy.
Right.
You know, we can all do the good stuff.
Yeah.
But we can't always be very kind and loving when things are not going so well.
People don't want to work through that. People are too quickly to pull the parachute on a relationship. They're going into marriages thinking, if I don't like it, I'll just get divorced.
I did that. I did it.
Yeah.
I've been married 3 times. And even that myself, when I say that out loud, I feel almost like a little bit of shame. I used to feel it more, but now I kind of twisted it that I feel empowered by the fact that I've been married 3 times, because now in my 3rd marriage to my husband, Brian, who I love dearly, we have our challenges. I cry. I don't like him sometimes. He doesn't like me. All the same stuff that all of you have in your relationships, that's happening to me too. But the difference is that I know that we're together and that we're supporting each other and that we're staying together. There's no, we're not going to get through this. It's you and me, and we're going to get through it no matter what it is.
Well, you've told me, and I know you, so you spent a lot of time on a boat.
Yes.
And that something about that is like we're in this survival element that we are together in this. Is going to be rocky waters, and there's going to be challenges and leaks and waves and all that kind of stuff, and we're going to navigate this.
Right. We're going to do it no matter what. And there's trust in that. You have to kind of build that trust, and it's not always easy to do. But when we're vulnerable and we really start sharing our junk, you know, the things that make us, the things we're struggling with, that's when we get that connection, because the person that we love, they want to make us happy. They just don't know how.
How many marriages did he have before you?
He only had 1 marriage before me. I'm his 2nd marriage.
2nd, 3rd, 3 and 2. It was a full house.
But we're going to be married for 12 years, April 28th, coming right up. And we've been together 14 years. And there was a time in my relationship with Brian that something happened. I remember walking out the door, slamming the door because I didn't want to have diarrhea of the mouth, which had been kind of what I have done in other times. I went for the jugular. Like, I wanted to hurt that person because they hurt me, and I didn't do that. I walked out the door, and I started to just walk around the loop, and I started to think, okay, what are the things you love about Brian? And I started filling myself with all the things that I loved about him. And there were so many. And by the time I went on that half-a-mile loop, I came back and felt grateful that I had someone, that I had all these things that I loved about. And no one's going to be perfect. But he was perfect for me because he had patience with me. He had accepted me, my children. I mean, I came with baggage. I came with things that, you know, weren't the easiest in our relationship. And he's been a rock. Even when, you know, we had challenges with the kids, they were adult kids when I married Brian. And they came to live with us. I mean, we had some really challenging things, but we know we're staying together. Even if we're mad, we still love each other, and we know that. And we have that pact. I think I might have shared this with you on the first time I was on your show, that I would never intentionally hurt him, and he would never intentionally hurt me. And we say that out loud often. That's
such a good word. All right, we have a pact to give you more information here. I am with Michelle Hayes. She is the Monarch For Love. But I got to pay for things around here. We got to take a quick break. I will be back right after this. And we are back. We're talking about love, relationships, communication, and all that. So you had to, at some point, go back and look at your prior relationships, not just your marriages. And you had to be like, maybe it shouldn't have worked out, maybe it didn't work out, but what was my contribution to this, to not working out? Which a lot of people are not willing to do. I married the wrong person, it was the wrong time, it was the wrong place, or whatever. Everybody's got to own something in that.
Well, part of the thing was I thought I was perfect. I really did. I thought I did everything perfect. I was a good wife. I enjoyed sex. I was friendly to guests. I made a nice home. It was beautiful. I was respectful of I really, in my mind, was like, I don't know what he could possibly not love about me.
Right.
And I believed that.
Right.
But then I started thinking, now I'm going to put myself in their shoes. How easy is it to always think that someone is superior? Like I would think that I had like that superiority complex with them. I thought, well, you have a lot to learn. And I mean, sometimes I have that still where I'm like, I can't believe he doesn't know this. But not everybody knows everything. And it's your job as a couple to bring out the best in each other.
Right.
Even if that best comes out a little teeny tiny bit at a time. And Brian does that to me. I have different gifts than he does. He's very business oriented. He's into finances. He brings a completely different thing to the table. I bring the fun and the enthusiasm and all of that. And he used to look at me and get worried, like, how do you not know this? And I'd be like, well, how do you not know this? But we came to a place now, instead of being bipolar on opposite ends, he's learned a little bit from me and I've learned a little bit from him. And now we're much closer in our values and the way we see things and how we communicate with one another.
That is really important point you bring up. So you said you were the one who bring the fun and the enthusiasm to the relationship. A lot of time that is a situation where one person does that. And as the relationship starts to get off track a little bit, that person who is shouldering, not necessarily the burden for the relationship, but the burden for that fun element, take that away, the whole thing feels different. And the whole thing can go bad. Like, you know, and I've been that person too, where I'm Mr. Laughs. And sometimes they're like, I need more out of you than jokes. And I'm like, why? Why do we need more out of me than jokes? And if I pull back on that, you can feel the energy
shift.
Yeah.
100%. Brian definitely feels my energy shift when I'm not happy-go-lucky Michelle.
Right.
And we recently were having some challenges in our relationship where it was like, I was just frustrated and I withdraw then. I don't really talk that much. I'm certainly not joking around or smiling or wanting to be playful or anything like that. It's like I kind of flatline. And he doesn't like that at all.
No.
And we sat down together and another thing is people yell at each other a lot, right?
Yeah.
Because it's emotion and all of that stuff. And that's very normal. And I used to be that way too. And I learned that does not create any kind of understanding or connection. It disconnects you in such a way that you sometimes can't get back.
You're right. Sometimes, I mean, and you're torn when you're in that situation.
Yes.
You don't want to be you don't want to say the wrong thing.
No.
Saying nothing doesn't help either.
No.
So trying to find, when you're involved in a disconnect and all this emotion and this, trying to find like that middle ground to try and make it, that's no picnic for anybody.
No.
They're not a mind reader. They also don't want to inflame it. And then the silence goes away and eventually you start talking again, but you never really repaired whatever the rift was.
And people don't repair. No. That's what happens. They fight. And they argue, they say things,
scar
and
tissue.
and then that's it. And you can't, if you don't repair after every conflict in some way. I mean, it could be as easy as just like saying, "Hey, hon, I would never intentionally hurt you. I'm sorry that I did," and just give them a hug, and it kind of dissipates the escalation.
Sometimes 3 days go by and it seems okay, and then you move on, and you're afraid to bring it up because you don't want to fire it up again, and you just kind of pretend. But you didn't really heal the rift, and the communication breakdown is gonna come up again on its own.
Absolutely, because that's just the nature of relationships. We're going to have that.
Right.
You have to expect it. Hey, you're gonna have. This might be feeling really good and fun right now, but you know that shoe's going to drop and you're going to be having an argument or having a really hurtful experience together, and making the decision to move through that without attacking each other is profound, actually.
I think you got to say, what could the other side of this look like? The other side of this breakdown, and how do I get there? And a lot of people don't do that. Either they just want to get to the other side or they don't care how they get there. And I'm like, what are the steps? Apologies always go a long way.
Right.
But sometimes it's tough on the other person to either accept the words, to believe the words, how they want to interpret. There's always some nuance and like, I'm sorry you feel that way. You can't say that.
No, that's like,
I know.
No.
And or somebody saying I'm sorry because they know that matters, but then you're reading the tone. That's not exactly the way I pictured it in my head, so I'm not counting it.
Yeah.
It's amazing we ever get together or stay together.
During my little thing that I had with Brian recently, it wasn't little, but it wasn't, like horrible. But one of the things I had been feeling, which was very, very hard for me to say, and I remember sitting across from him because we sat in the living room. He sat in his recliner, and I sat in the other recliner across the way, like enough distance, and we just
Recliner Wars.
Yeah,
That's a good show.
We were just kind of looking at each other and really trying to listen. And I said, Brian, I know that you would never want to make me feel this way, but sometimes I feel like I don't matter. And I could see in his face, like he never expected me to say that, because to him, he's doing everything to make me feel like I do matter.
Right.
And obviously there was a disconnect there.
Well, there's a disconnect. I never want to make you feel this way. And then she comes back with, but you do make me feel this way.
Right. And then the question is,
and it's how and why.
Yes. Well, tell me how.
Right.
And then I gave him a couple of examples of how. And then he said, I know the feeling because sometimes I feel like I don't matter also. And then my little superiority complex girl came out and she said, Brian, well, tell me what I do specifically that makes you feel like you don't matter. And then I proceeded to give him a list of all the things that I do because I want him to feel like he matters.
Right.
And it was a very emotional thing. I was crying. He was clearly emotional as well. But we respected each other enough to listen. When somebody says something like that to you, your immediate thing is you want to get defensive. Well, I don't do anything that, you want to say that. But you have to acknowledge that if your partner is feeling some way, they're feeling that.
You're right. Here's another challenge. And I've heard it and I've said it. And this is some too. I don't matter, blah, blah. The disconnect breaks down and you're like, and they'll say, or I'll say, or we all say, I'm here, aren't I? And sometimes that's everything, and sometimes that's nothing.
Yeah.
I'm here means I want to work, so I'm sticking this with you, or attendance counts for everything and not the rest of it. Do you see? I see both sides of that.
I see both sides of that too, but that's...
What are you doing here?
Yeah, that's the nature of relationships, though.
Yeah.
There is so many sides to every single thing. What I feel is never going to be the same thing what Brian feels. And people look at us and they do a lot of likes and, there's Michelle and Brian and they're on their boat and they're going here and going there and they think we have this amazing life. And they say to me, I want what you have. And I say, you don't. You want what you need. I said, you want what you should have, because you can only build and create something, the two of you together. I can't help you build that. I can help you come up with different skills and practices that may help you do those things. But if you don't implement them, nothing's going to change. And that's what people don't do. They don't want to implement the things that they need to do to create something different. Because
we've talked to a lot of divorced people around here, and a lot of people do find it on the third. Once they get into 4, 5, 6, you could tell whatever.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are like, I had 2 marriages where one, I didn't understand them, one, I didn't understand me, and now I'm going. So did you go into the third one thinking that this is going to be different? Or once you were in it, did you realize this is different and I can be different?
It was once I was in it. Because first of all, after number 2, I was like, I am never getting married again.
Right.
I'm going to just have fun. I'm going to go out. I'm going to enjoy myself when things start being, not good anymore, then I'm going to move to the next thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're animals. We're not supposed to be with somebody for the whole life. We all change. I mean, you could go on and on in different tangents about these things. But when I got into it with Brian, he was different. He genuinely listened and didn't become defensive. I mean, we've had moments that we have had that, but his general being was very calm and collected and, I want to understand you. And then I wanted to understand him too. And I would ask questions and I would say, hey, listen, are you upset about this? Is there something like I would ask straight out? We don't want to ask because we're afraid of the answer.
Right.
And that's not always easy to do, but you have to. If you want to create something magical and something long lasting and healthy and something more importantly, fulfilling, you have to make little choices each day to, because it's the compound effect.
Right.
Nothing's going to happen overnight. Just like you love them in the beginning and then you can't stand them 5 years. That doesn't happen in one day.
No.
It's all those little things each day that either create or destroy love.
Right. And you have to understand, you have to be like, oh my God, that's exhausting. I have to do this every day. No, it will get easier and it'll be part of the routine and you will spend less time with breakdowns on the whole thing if you sort of get ahead of it. You're like, a lot of times it's like a skier doing a slalom course and you got to see the gates in front of you or whatever, but that should be part of, if you look at it like you're on a journey together.
Right.
And you're trying not to, run aground. That's it.
When couples are stuck, they don't want to be first. Why should I be the first?
Right.
And then he's like, well, I'm not. She was a bitch. All of this, nobody wants to be first. And one of the things that I really encourage people to do is be first. Be the one that reaches out first. Be the one that says, hey, I miss you. You don't have to say, hey, you're not paying attention to me. How come we don't spend?
Yeah.
All you have to say is something so simple as, hey, I missed hanging out with you.
For no reason. Just say it.
Yeah, just say it.
I know.
Be the first person because they want it too.
And say it at a time when they don't expect it.
Yeah.
Like just random.
Yeah, random. Hey.
All right. You've been doing your podcast now a couple of years. So bravo
This is
for
my
that.
third, yeah.
What have you learned through doing that, through having these conversations?
Well, I definitely have learned that people have unrealistic expectations of love and marriage. 100%. I've also...
No doubt.
Yeah. I've also learned that, and I said this earlier, love is a skill that can be learned and practiced because we are not built to love. We are built for connection. We're hardwired for that.
Yeah.
But we're not built to inherently know how to love another human being.
Yeah.
We can't even love ourselves.
I know. The heart is a muscle.
That's
You gotta
right.
work it.
So those little things make a big difference. And another thing I would say is you have to really want it because people give up way too easily. I see this all the time.
They do. And I mentioned this on the last podcast that I did, and I was surprised that I hadn't really thought about it or really heard it before. People are not afraid of being of commitment. They're not afraid of marriage. They're afraid of being committed or in a marriage with the wrong person.
I've heard you say
They're
that.
terrified of, what if I'm stuck? What if I meet somebody else? I don't know who I am yet. This is 50 years. Like that. They're putting up walls that probably don't exist. And don't worry about that. Like try and make this the right person in the right situation before you worry about that. It's such a backwards way to think.
Well, you know what? I was out to dinner with my son, who's 30, and my husband, Brian, the other night. And we started talking about relationships a bit. And Brian and my son was saying, oh, yeah, right before I left Oklahoma, I started meeting all these girls. And then Brian said, well, you never heard that. Did you ever hear that saying, as soon as you put a ring on it, somebody else better comes along.
Right.
We have too many choices. With all this Bumble and all these apps that we have, we are bombarded with choices. People are dating 5 people at a time. That is also something that is detrimental to us. It's not wrong to date several people because each time you date someone, you get closer and closer to the knowledge. Your brain says, oh yeah, I like this, I don't like that. It's those, like you said, women look for the red flags, men look for the green lights.
I like when you quote me to me.
Yeah.
Good, yes.
Well, because I know you,
Yeah,
and I
that's good.
listen to your podcast, and I learn things from you too. Because the dating pool is something that I really don't dabble in too much.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
too much. Hear
yeah.
that, husband, Brian? Too much.
No,
She
no.
looks at it.
No. It's just that people sometimes ask me,
Right.
single people, they'll ask
Yeah.
me about dating. And I always say, you got to listen to Brian Howie because he's the king of that. He knows that stuff.
Well, I'm the king of asking the questions. I don't know if I'm the king of giving the answers, but having these conversations, which I have done for 10 years and you've done for 3 years on your podcast, really does give some thought.
I've been doing it my whole life, really.
Yeah, that's true.
I really have. And I know that one thing that I heard you also say was that we care. And we obviously both care.
Yeah, I care about this stuff.
Yeah,
It
me
drives
too.
me nuts when people are just negative, or they're like, "There's nobody out there." There's lots of people out there.
Oh, and people who are good and wanting to have love. And
Somebody I saw post on one of the social media sites the other day, and they posted like, I did a little survey that came through, and it said that only 1 out of 1,000 people would I be compatible with, and I'm like, well, how many do you need? Good, one.
one.
There's 1 out of 1,000. Leave your house. There's probably 1,000 people within 10 yards of you. 1 every day.
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at it so negatively. How many do you need out of 1,000? You need 1. Done.
Yeah.
You shouldn't want. It should be hard to get.
Yes.
It should be hard to find. That's what makes it special, right?
Yes, that is true.
Tell everybody about your podcast, how they can find it, and what can they expect.
Well, you can listen to the Monarch For Love podcast on anywhere that you listen to your shows. I also have been doing some writing. I have 2 columns, one for the Lighthouse Point magazine and one for the Happy Herald, which I really enjoy.
Good for you.
Yeah, I do my little Monarch, and actually, the Happy Herald does Monarch of Love, but I didn't correct them. It was just cute. They just changed it. But I understand how somebody might not understand the nuance of 4. Mm-hmm. So,
And the monarch is the butterfly.
yes, the Monarch is
And explain why that matters to you. It's a transformation.
It's a transformation. You can transform your marriage anytime that you decide that you want to. You can go home today and do one small thing that brings your partner closer to you, and you'll be closer to them. It's a small thing. It doesn't have to be this big gestures and saying, not that there's anything wrong with those things, but it's the little things that cause the compound effect to create the relationship that you want and that you deserve.
There you go. I always like having you on because you speak very positively about your husband, Brian. And when you say the words like, Brian is amazing, I pretend that somebody's saying that about me.
Well, I'm sure somebody does say that about you because you are.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you. Thank you for coming back. We were way too many months in between you coming back. Last time you were here, I had a ton of feedback on it. So come back.
Thank you
Stay
so
off
much
the
for
boat.
having me. I really appreciate it.
As far as us and Monarch for Love, like, share, follow, please review her podcast, my podcast. Your reviews still mean a lot in the podcasting ecosystem. Shoot us an email, greatlovedebate@gmail.com if you've got a question for me, Michelle, or anything else. Go to our website, greatlovedebate.com. We do have live tour dates coming up. I keep saying, like, I'm not going to do more. They book us. So,
I want to go to one of those.
Who am I to turn down cash and laughs? So we roll on because, as always, at the Great Love Debate, we never stop making love. See you next time.